Let's get the number one point out of the way. GOOH is pronounced
Go.
Not goo.
No. That's how we know if you're in the club, if you call it go or goo, and we all laugh, right? That's what happens when they let a computer guy come up with a name for something like this.
All right, then. I'm going to pull up your book here for a minute. I expect politicians will spend the first few months ignoring our plan, then a month or two explaining what a dumb idea it is and why the questions are inappropriate and unanswerable. What if the questions are inappropriate or unanswerable?
We don't think they are, right? What we're trying to do is get true citizen representatives to document how you would vote if you were in office. It's unlikely that a bill would ever come through one sentence, as the questionnaire is, but it forces you to declare on which side of a line you stand, right? Are you for or against reducing foreign aid by X amount? Are you for or against a balanced budget amendment? Are you for or against the fair tax? Those are all very fair questions. We ask questions about abortion and health care and guns and everything else. If you're going to go to office and represent me, how would you vote if you were there? Those are fair questions. Politicians don't want to answer them. Right? They don't want to give you a...
Why not? What's your theory why they don't want to answer that?
They don't want to be backed into a corner, right? They're worried about offending somebody, and they're worried about having to get up there and vote a certain way and kind of being backed into a corner. What we know is politicians don't represent you or I once they're in office. They represent the special interest groups that fund them. They represent their party who tells them how to vote, and they represent their own political career long before they think about you or I. We're fourth at best on their list of priorities.
And there is no way in your mind that they can do all of those first three things and the fourth one as well at the same time?
Well, they don't. If I look at the results, right, the results are horrendous. They might try, and I'm not saying that they're all bad people, but if I look at the results, right, every budget that comes through, there's 8,000 earmarks in there. Why? Because they have to reward the special interest groups that reward them. Who wants those earmarks? Nobody, other than the politicians that put them in there.
Well, now, wait a minute. Earmarks are for a community center for old people in the hometown of the representative in many cases. I mean, is that what you call a special interest group?
Let the hometown pay for it. If you want a community center in your hometown, if we want one here in Austin, Austin should pay for it. We don't need the folks of Ohio to pay for a community center or a bridge or a pond in Texas. Right? That's a Texas function. The federal government is for interstate activity. We don't need to pay for bridges in Alaska or levees in Louisiana unless we're from those states. And if you go poll people, and we've surveyed literally hundreds of thousands of people now, nobody wants that, right? You'll find a few people, I shouldn't say nobody, there's always the bell curve with the tells, oh yeah, my congressman brings home and did this one little thing, but those folks aren't thinking about the big picture, right? And the big picture gets down to fiscal responsibility.
Okay. Whether the questions are fair or not, in the general sense that you raise in your questionnaire, I want to focus on 2 or 3 of them just as some examples. And this gets to the intricacies involved in any given issue. Will you vote for or against the legalization of marijuana? Well, are we talking about medical marijuana or are we talking about general marijuana use?
That says marijuana, period. Would you legalize marijuana? Put your position in writing, right? Most libertarians, or many libertarians, would say for. I think most folks would say against. That's an easy question.
But what about medical marijuana?
That doesn't say medical, right? That says the legalization of marijuana. If a bill comes up that says, would you vote for or against the legalization of medical marijuana, that's not what that question asks.
Okay. But one wouldn't necessarily know that to read the question.
Okay, so what we say is if this question comes up for vote, you must vote the way you said you would.
Okay,
right?
well, let's get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
I want to...
Yeah, and the key point is there's not going to be a bill that comes through with 2 sentences, right? What we're trying to do is get you to declare how you stand on an issue. And when you go through these mock selection sessions where you actually choose your peers, they start the conversation with the other folks.
Okay. So ultimately, as the campaign progresses, you would get to the distinctions and the subtleties.
Absolutely, absolutely. The way it works, and I don't know if you want to get into this, but you sort all of the participants randomly into pools of 10.
I don't want to get into it because I've read it and I'm going to outline that with graphics on the screen, so I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that here today. Will you vote for or against supporting the right of every citizen to carry a concealed weapon, assuming they can demonstrate basic firearm competence, but excluding those who have been convicted of a felony or deemed to be mentally incompetent? I'm supposed to say yes or no. But wait a minute, who's going to determine whether my father or my child is mentally incompetent?
I would assume the state would, right? There's rules for everything.
You would assume so.
Absolutely.
But the person reading this question and having to answer it, for better or for worse, wouldn't necessarily make the same assumption or even know.
That's up to them, right? To us, right, we look, this is a simple question, and it's really basically about gun control. Are you for the rights for individuals to carry and possess a firearm or not?
Will you vote for or against a guest worker program that allows non-U.S. citizens to work in the United States? Well, to work where? To do what? By non-citizen, do you mean one that's here now already or one that comes in the future? Do all of the ones that are here now have to go home first? None of these issues are addressed in this question.
Yeah, well, and so the questions are trying to get you to declare what your position is on an issue, and then you'll debate those points with your peers, right? So if you answer one way and I answer the other, and when we sit down and go through this mock selection, that might be the one I want to ask you. So why did you vote this way? And then that will lead to the conversation. If we're agreeing on those, the subtleties, right? We don't have time to propose 2,000-page bills and go through and ask how you're going to vote. So we're trying to get a feel for where you are. And what we've learned by asking these 100 questions, if we come back, I study your answers, and then I ask you any 20 other questions with about 98% accuracy, we can predict how you will answer, and you could predict how I will answer if you'll study mine. It's not a personality test, but it's a profile on what your beliefs are. Do you believe in amending the Constitution? Do you believe in spending more or less? Do you believe in gun control? Do you believe in, what's your views on illegal immigration or balanced budgets? And it really gives you a great insight into that other person. We've ran over 3,000 tests where people have gone through these questions and then sat down and chosen a person to represent them, and the results are superb.
Superb as defined by?
The quality of the candidate that rises out of each pool is an excellent candidate, and the people that do the choosing are unanimously happy with the person that's selected and like, yes, that person could go and represent me tomorrow.
Okay, that's helpful. Something else while you and Chris were in there, I was just kind of looking through. This process will put an end to pork barrel projects and bureaucratic waste. Well, that goes to basically what you were saying earlier, that it is not the role of the federal government to take care of individual little old situations all over the country. That's the responsibility of local people. My question to you, though, is, would you acknowledge that the federal government has gotten involved in a lot of this stuff because local communities and states failed to take care of their people and to take care of the downtrodden, if you want to call them that, over the years?
I think that might have been the intention that they had. But if you read the Constitution, it's pretty clear, right? There's not much ambiguity with the 10th Amendment, right? And the limited and enumerated powers that are granted.
To the federal government.
To the federal government. And what we see, right, the results where the federal government gets involved generally aren't that great, right? It's hard to name a very successful government program. We might talk about the military or
we might
NASA.
talk about Medicare.
Yeah.
Would you call that a successful program?
Well, considering we're looking at $60 trillion in unfunded expenses coming up, that doesn't sound very successful. Yeah, we've been successful at keeping people healthy and alive longer, and that's absolutely a positive. But you can't do it by printing money.